Hey, what's up, everyone? Dragon back again, here to tell you that you should be reading Beowulf's Children. So, Beowulf's Children, which is originally titled in the UK as The Dragons of Heorot, is a 1995 science fiction novel written by Larry Niven, Jerry Parnell, and Stephen Barnes, and serves as the sequel to the original story, The Legacy of Heorot, which we've talked about on this show previously. It was actually the first episode we did. And with this series, I definitely wanted to get to the next installment because I felt that it was kind of an important next step and very much a worthy successor to the original. Now, this takes up basically a generation after the events in the first novel. So you have all the same returning characters, well, the ones who didn't die anyway, plus now their children who have kind of come age. And you start seeing this interesting dichotomy between kind of old and new. You have this idea of people being starborn, these children who were born on this alien world, and kind of the growing distrust between them and their parents, because unfortunately their parents have what was called ice in the mind, which was hibernation instability, basically. For the long hypersleep through space, they develop ice crystals in the brain, which affect and impair judgment, which we discussed in that episode. And once the children kind of became aware of this generational divide began to form and grow into something of a chasm. So now, while for the most part getting along, you definitely still see that there is one generation and another generation. And like with all younger generations, there is this push forward, this push to achieve more, to get more, to do and break boundaries that were put in place by those who came before. I mean, their parents I've been restricting access to the mainland. The younger generation has been saying for years, we need to go. They're young. They're adventurous. And that's really kind of what this story is about. It's kind of it's a generation war. We've seen that before in our history, in our world, where you have generations who came before who got to a certain point, but because of certain issues, certain conflicts they ran into, made them gun shy to go any further than they did. So they kind of got to a certain point, set up the roadblocks, and they're like, this is good enough for now, all in good time. And then you have that next generation who have spent their whole life behind those roadblocks, looking at what maybe lies ahead beyond them, but never being allowed to step over, to cross over, to go someplace they've never been, to see something they've never seen, to touch something they've never been able to touch. In essence, to be able to have an experience that they know they could, but has always been denied to them because of fear from those who came before. And it is this conflict that drives this younger generation to kind of essentially rebel and go out, to explore the mainland, to go there. But you kind of find that with the story in the first one dealing with kind of monsters in a literal sense, this story plays on the notion of monsters in the human condition, so to speak, which is, again, something we've discussed on a little bit on the show. The Grendels are still a part of this world and actually have a very interesting role in this book. But you basically kind of find that some of these children, one in particular who never actually had parents, was basically a test tube baby, and basically kind of grew up in this communal lifestyle, kind of going from family to family, is kind of this spearheading this movement, this young, rebellious, free love, free sex, free drugs kind of society of younger people pushing against the old guard. And basically, in doing so, perhaps puts ambition over necessarily safety of kind of this younger tribe of people that he's kind of essentially become the unofficial leader of. And basically, what the story falls into is an idea that, yes, we need to move forward. Yes, we need to break new boundaries, but at the same time, we can't forget about where we came from. We cannot forget about why things were the way they were before. And basically, it's all about moving forward while taking history into account, embracing a newer generation of thought and idea without completely disregarding the old one. Because not everything that is old is bad, and not everything that is new is necessarily good. We have to understand there's pros and cons to both, and there's sometimes merit in both. And it's about meeting in the middle in such a way where we learn the lessons of the past, so when we move forward, we don't make new mistakes. And that is, again, the essence of this culture clash, this generation war, if you will, is that two generations. One who want to kind of reinvigorate the sense of exploration that perhaps the original generation lost, because when they came to this bold new world, they were hit very hard with a very real truth that they were not the dominant species and that this planet was filled with danger that could potentially wipe out this colony before it even really got started. And that is why the older generation is so gun shy. They remember the Grendel Wars. They remember almost being obliterated. So when you have this younger generation that's saying you're just overreacting, you're being too scared, you're holding us back, in their minds are thinking you have no idea just how bad things can get. To be fair, because of hibernation stability, the younger generation look at them, but how much of that is based on fact versus your just inability to process things as they are? How bad was it really? Do you remember it really as bad as it was, or is it a result of your inability to process things effectively like we can? Maybe we can look on it and see it for more what it actually was versus what you remember it. And that becomes the conflict is, how bad is it? Is it good idea versus old idea? Is it a generation war? What is the meat of the story? And basically what it comes down to is meeting in the middle. There's always going to be a younger generation who wants to go further. And there's always going to be that older generation that wags its finger and says, you got to be careful. You got to be cautious. And being careful is important. But being too careful can essentially cripple progress. But being too ambitious to the point where you're just throwing caution to the wind can just basically get you into the same mistakes that those who came before you found themselves in. So it's about finding that perfect balance. And that's basically what happens in the story. It's two generations who kind of meet each other in the middle, albeit at great cost, unfortunately. But it wouldn't be a great story if it didn't work out that way. But anyway, Beowulf's Children, or as some of you may have heard it, The Dragons of Heorot. Have you read it? If so, what did you think? If you have read it, do you feel it is a worthy successor to the Legacy of Heorot? Because Legacy of Heorot is personally one of my favorite stories, and I really, really enjoy Beowulf's Children. And I know for a lot of people, the Legacy of Heorot is, again, in terms of science fiction writing, kind of held up there. So what did you guys think of the sequel? Do you think it was a worthy follow-up? Do you think it put forth some new social issues that really kind of, elevated the overall kind of literary franchise, if you will? For those of you who have not read it, I will leave some links for where you can pick it up in the description section. Go read it. If you haven't read the first book, make sure you read that one first. And then read this one, and then come back. Give me some thoughts. Let me know what you think. Do you like it? Does it resonate with you? Do you feel its message is kind of a timeless one, as I do, where it doesn't matter what generation you are, there's always going to be a time where you find yourself being the old guard, just as we have always found ourselves at one point being the new one. At one point we were all that younger, more energetic generation that wanted to take more, that wanted to achieve more, that wanted to go beyond the limits of our parents. And ultimately we'll find ourselves being our parents, while there's now a younger generation who looks at us as being old and restrictive and wants to go beyond our reach. With that said, do you feel that issue maybe is even more relevant today? Anyway, give me some thoughts, let me know, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace!